We're here with another episode of Conversations and Connections. We're the official podcast of the Family Crisis Center of East Texas. I'm Stuart, the prevention coordinator for the agency. And with me today, I have Kim Riddle. She is our SANE nurse. And February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And I wanted to have Kim come in and just kind of talk a little bit about that topic and what her experiences with that as far as working with kids, and we'll kind of go from there. Kim, thanks you so much for coming out. I know you've been on the podcast before. Kind of tell us first just a little bit about what your role is with the Family Crisis Center. You're a SANE nurse. What is that?
So I am the forensic nursing coordinator, and so my job is to care for victims who have been through violence. So that would be from child abuse or any type of sexual abuse, intimate partner violence, teen dating violence. So that is the patient population that I see. Okay.
All right. Very good. So, a lot of people may not consider teens as really having to deal with relationship violence. When we think about relationship violence, we think of adults mostly, but unfortunately, it's something that even a young person has to deal with. I think a lot of times people just may not realize some of the pressures our young people go through when it comes to dating and relationships. And maybe relationships with teens these days are a lot more complicated than they used to be.
Teenagers actually experience violence, I would say, on a spectrum that's comparable to adults. They have their own little subculture and with their peer groups. And so there's a lot of pressure to conform to those peer groups. So their whole world is kind of, at their school or in those events that they're involved in. And so when they are involved in violence, sometimes, number one, they don't recognize it, but number two, they don't get out of it because that peer group may see that behavior is normal. And then they feel that pressure to maintain that relationship. Their friends just mean everything to them when they're young. And so they don't want to lose all their friendships. Right. It's really difficult for teenagers.
So when we talk about dating violence, how much of that involves, and this may just go through with just DV in general, it can be more than just physical violence, hitting. How much of that really involves like sexual assault?
Percentage-wise, I'm really not sure. There is a lot of sexual violence. There is physical violence. There's emotional violence. There's so many different elements. It's not just someone, punching you. That's right. Really what sometimes people still feel like family violence or intimate partner violence is. But it's so much more than that. It really involves that power and control dynamic. Just like it does for adults, it also involves power and control in our teen relationships.
Right. Does teen dating violence look different from relationship violence situations older adults may face? I know in general it is the same thing, but do the teens bring a unique situations, maybe is what I'm looking at when it comes to relationship violence? Or do you think it's pretty much the same as what an adult would face?
Really what we see is, our children are not fully developed, right? Their brains are still developing. So they're also, they're growing and maturing and trying to become independent. There's also a lot of hormone factors going on, right, in their body. So they have a lot that's going on. And they're trying to develop into their own person. So they're not as open maybe with parents or caregivers as maybe they once were when they were little. So when they get into these situations that maybe they are not prepared for, where they feel like they are, maybe unhappy in their relationship, and even if they may not even recognize that as abuse, but they don't really know how to get out of it or how to deal with it. And so they just kind of stay in it. And then, of course, there's that peer pressure to stay in that relationship, right? Everybody thinks, oh, this is a great girl or this is a great guy. They wouldn't do anything like that. But really, we know that they experience a lot of the same things. They experience, the stalking, the repeated phone calls, the threats, you can't leave me, I can't live without you, or I'm going to hurt myself. And all those things are so... It's overwhelming for teens. And then if they don't have anybody to talk to, it can lead to, even them wanting to hurt themselves. Depression, anxiety, it can be, it's just a huge problem. And I feel like if we don't get together as a culture and help change the culture on what violence is and what we find acceptable as a society, then, it's just going to keep getting worse, right? Because the kids are just a reflection of what they see adults doing. Yeah. And they're not isolated. So we have to, what is it that our culture says is acceptable? And, that constantly changes. So, there's a lot of violence in online and in games. And so it's almost to where we think that's normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I was going to kind of follow this up with what teen dating violence looks like, but we just kind of talked about that, really, and I'm glad you did point out, the facts that dating violence is more than just physical abuse. It can be so many other things that when we go out and we talk to the kids about.
Right.
What can friends, family, and when I say family, maybe especially parents, look for? If they suspect their friend or their child's relationships may not be that healthy or a healthy one, what can a teen's peers look for? What can a parent look for that may tell that something may not be right?
I would say really pay attention to your kids, right? I know we all have busy lives and we're on our phones, or we have meetings, or we have things that we are doing, but we need to pay attention to what our kids are doing. When you notice a behavioral change, or their grades are dropping, or they're losing weight, or they're not hanging out with their friends anymore, or they're changing, everything about, who they were, then those are red flags for you to look for. Take that time, ask them, if things are going on or, what they may need help with, because maybe that will allow them to open up. They may not come to you, so if you notice things are happening, you need to go to them. Maybe they've changed their whole friend group, and what brought that on. So, and know who their friends are. Where are they going? What are they doing? It's not that you don't trust them, but you're there to protect them.
Right. Okay. Do you think relationship violence amongst teens is more common now than it used to be? I kind of made that comment, I think, at the top of the show. Do you think maybe it's more common now, or do you think we're just more attention is focused on it now?
I think that could go either way. I do think there's more attention focused on it, but I also think it's probably always been around. But I feel like just by what we accept as our culture changes, that I feel like the violence has increased. I mean, there are so many things that we would not have accepted in the 50s, right? That is just normal for us now. So,
right.
Desensitization, right, occurs.
Yeah,
so.
Right. Do you think some parents or even schools may think that it can happen to them? I think I see that sometimes in communities that we go out to. Oh, well, that doesn't happen here. That or that would never happen to my kid. My kid knows better, or my kid knows how to make good decisions.
Absolutely, and you know that, and I know that because we talk to kids every year, and we know that it does. It happens in every community. It happens to every gender, every socioeconomic group, it's everybody. It affects everybody. There's no one select group of people who are not affected by violence. Family violence is off the chain. And so is teen dating violence. it can seem so overwhelming that they don't know really how to get out of it. And then we see things like sexual assault may occur, and that's just them feeling pressured or coerced into doing things that they're not ready to do. And that's a huge problem as well.
Well, that's what I was thinking about also, besides the violent sexual pressures today. I think, when we go out, we talk about or we see educators talk about, sexting, and things like that happening at an earlier and earlier age. There's just more pressure on kids nowadays to want to feel like they got to engage in sexual activity before they're really ready. And I'm sure that plays a part in the relationship violence.
Sure, absolutely. Well, sexting is what they call an epidemic. I mean, how many schools have asked us to come in and talk to kids about sexting? I mean, many of them, because it is such a problem, and kids just don't realize all that goes along with that. And so they're posting a picture, and they think they're just sending it to one person, and then they forward it, and then there's all those things that, they can get in trouble at school. They, lose their privileges. Plus, that photo's out there forever. And just, the embarrassment and it's really, it can feel like a trap they can't get out of. Then you have, suicide is one of the leading causes of death in young people, and I feel like social media plays a role in that.
Yeah.
So it leads to bullying. It just leads to a lot of problems.
And we may have already kind of touched on this, but what can parents and educators do to educate kids about this issue? I know there's more mandates now in the state of Texas from Austin that schools are required in their health curriculum to talk about relationships and things like that. But is that all we can do? As parents, as teachers, what can we do to make sure we get this point across to kids?
Well, of course, we first want to just to educate, right? That's the first step. Let's educate, but also let's get kids involved. Let's have kid groups that lead their peers in better relationships. Let's educate them on relationships. So, how kids are, like, you can tell them no, and that almost makes them want to do it more. It's just that age that they're going through. And so, yes, we want to educate them, but we have to do more. Like, we have to, as a society, we have to say, we are not going to tolerate this violence, right? We're just not going to tolerate this anymore. This is not healthy. So teach them, what is a healthy relationship? They don't even know. They're just learning about relationships.
Right.
What is good? What is bad? Why should I be concerned that this person is trying to control me and, doesn't want me to talk to my friends and, is putting pressure on me to do things. So
yeah. What is it about this topic that really lights a fire in your belly? I think you're kind of known, at least in our agency, for having a passion to educate and talk to kids about this topic, about teen dating violence and sexual pressures and sexual violence. What is it about that just really ignites you to want to talk to kids about this?
Well, I love kids for starters. So I love kids, right? They're our future, and our world will end without them, right? So why wouldn't we want to help them? Why wouldn't we want to help them grow into, healthy adults that have healthy relationships? Like, that's our future. And of course, I'm a sexual assault nurse, so that's what I do primarily. I see the trauma that these things cause and to kids, and there's a lot of healing that has to occur. And these adverse things that happen to them as kids can affect them lifelong, psychologically, but also physically. So it's just really important that we help our children.
Yeah. Okay. Any parting thoughts, parting words before we kind of wrap this up? Again, February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. We have presentations lined up at various schools throughout our coverage area. Anything else that you can think of that we want to touch base on before we wrap it up?
I would say don't turn a blind eye, right? Be aware of what's happening in your community. And, if you do need a presentation, we are willing to come to any group. Just give us a call and we'll be there.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim. As always, I appreciate it. And again, if you feel like you need the services of the Family Crisis Center, we do have our toll-free number. That's 1-800-828-7233. Be sure to subscribe to Conversations and Connections. You can do that via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any podcast service of your choice. And of course, I always like to end by saying if you'd like to make a donation to the Family Crisis Center, go to our website, FamilyCrisisCenterofEastTexas.com. There at the bottom left, you'll see a donate button. You can click on that if you'd like to make a monetary donation to help survivors of relationship violence. Always be the voice, if not for you, for someone else.